up on your screen.
Yeah. Okay, I'd like to call the Conservation, Sustainability, and Green Initiatives Committee to order, November 23rd. And Council, can you take roll?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Reinhardt,
Yep.
Evacora,
Here.
Camiso,
Here.
Fine,
Here.
Lockhart,
Here.
Miller,
Present.
Plotsky, Simpson,
Here.
and Tunney.
Here.
8 present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. First order of business then is to approve the previous meeting minutes. Are there any comments on the minutes? Is there a motion to approve, Matt? And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Peter. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, unanimous. Passed. The minutes approved. First, I wanted to say for the first 2 items, the public hearing for local law M and the local law M itself. We're going to table these at the request of the sponsor, but Jeff wanted to, and I asked Jeff to spend just a couple minutes explaining what his idea was. So we can get a better understanding, because there were several comments made both by council and the executive director of the Soil and Water Conservation District, which we're going to have to work through those. But Jeff, can you just explain briefly what it was you were trying to do here?
Sure. Thank you, Chairman. I think in the immediate term, the objective is to ensure that the solar project that's been proposed out at near the Anley Pond is an uncompromised success. As you may know, the development of that particular project requires the clear cutting of several acres of mature black locust trees. And unless we make some provision and planning, which this measure attempts to do, it will make that overall project, in my opinion, sort of one step forward, one step back. You know, one step forward in terms of solar, but a step back in terms of deforestation and overall carbon sequestration. And that's because the black locust trees are particularly effective at carbon sequestration. So the immediate objective of this was to figure out, okay, how can we all get behind the solar project at Anley, but do so in a way that is net positive for the environment, not a compromise, sort of, like I said, one step forward, one step back. Secondly, and sort of a longer term objective, it's to establish that as a matter of public policy, that our county, much like several surrounding counties, is committed to the concept of forest preserves. Schenectady County has a dedicated county-owned forest preserve, as does Saratoga County. In addition to preserving green space and providing the important role in terms of climate change, they're sources of economic development and county recreation as well. And I know that we all want Albany County to be a leader in addressing climate challenges, but it's hard to aspire to leadership when we're not even keeping pace in important areas with our surrounding counties. So that's the idea of out of this measure, creating an Albany County Forest Preserve would, I think, enable us to keep pace, and doing so with an innovative measure that says that leading by example, when the county itself is the developer, when the county disturbs or destroys forest, it will replace it, I think is an appropriate way to initiate us joining our peer counties in preserving forests. And finally, thirdly, to that notion of sort of aspiring to leadership, in the recently passed federal infrastructure bill, there are billions of dollars specifically for forests and reforestation. And I think our county should be at the table and get its rightful place and be in a position to be able to take advantage of really an unprecedented amount of funding for urban forestation, suburban forestation. This is the moment. And we just don't really have the tools and the resources. And in fact, not only are we not really prepared currently, but if we don't do something like this, we're actually going to be going in the wrong direction with some of our proposed development. So that's the idea. Obviously, it's a fairly major policy measure, so that's why we're trying to take the time to get more input and to work through the particulars. But that in a elongated nutshell is the impetus behind the measure.
Well, I just want to add to the elongated nutshell a little bit, Jeff, and say that Jeff and I have talked about the fact that some of us were also working on another initiative having to do with essentially food trees, fruit trees, maybe even nut trees, to deal with food desert issues in certain parts of the county. And, Jeff and I had a very interesting conversation about that, which was actually, this idea was started, I'd say, with Lynn Lakakis. But I've been working with the chairman's office to try to look at some things we might do there. And it occurred to me as I was discussing this bill with Jeff that we actually have now, a few different ideas around trees, how we can be proactive in the development of certain programs around trees, both for food and these other multiple benefits that Jeff is alluding to in terms of climate and recreation and all that. So I'm kind of wondering whether we can put these two things together, these two ideas together, and try to get a group of us who have an interest in these things to work on these together to see if we can come up with a way to address the different issues that have been raised, and position the county, as Jeff alluded to be ready for when infrastructure funding becomes available for this kind of work. The further we are down the path of having an idea for how we might do this and pay for it, I think is a good idea. So, if anybody is interested, either contact myself or Jeff, and we'll see if if there's some momentum for moving in that direction. Does anyone have any questions or comments at this point about these two initiatives? These are going to be tabled right now, but if anyone has a thought they want to raise now, now is the time.
No,
Well,
Bill,
it
I was
sounds
just
like
asking-
something that we want to do. It sounds like something that we should make work.
Okay, thank you, Mert. Anyone else? Matt?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up I think you mentioned already, Bill, but you and Jeff be discussing the concerns of the Solon County Soil and Water Conservation Board.
Yes, yeah, Jeff and I we've talked about that a little bit, and I have a letter from our council expressing some concerns, and then also a letter from Susan Lewis from Soil and Water. I only got those today. I haven't shared those with anybody, but clearly those are all things that would be on the record, and we can kind of work through those as we move forward. And frankly, they may affect this issue of the fruit trees as well. So yeah, there definitely was a concern expressed. Matt and I, we brought this up at the Soil and Water Conservation monthly meeting, and Susan had some comments. So I've got those now, and those will get looked at as we move forward.
Excellent. Thank you.
I see Vicky has her hand up.
Oh, I just wanted to chime in that I'd like to be included in further discussions as this goes forward. If I can help out, that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Vicky. All right, anyone else? Patricia?
Yeah, can you tell us what those concerns were?
Yeah, I let's see. I can tell you. Well, here's the letter from Soil and Water Conservation District. I haven't. I'd rather not try to go into all of that right now. But basically, the most important thing I think is that she's not a fan of black locust. She said, those are invasive. We do not want those. So cutting them down is no problem with her in her mind at the solar site, or anywhere else for that matter. But she did say that they're involved in a lot of tree programs, but not the actual planting of the trees. So like the Soil and Water Conservation District will purchase trees in bulk, saving for homeowners and consumers can come pick them up at the facility in Voorheesville. And they have a program like the 10,000 Trees program where they work with municipalities, but they don't actually do the planting. So they're not really in a position right now to go out and do planting. But, one of the things Jeff and I discussed today is part of the president's infrastructure bill, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, I think it is, mentions or has in it some money for a civilian conservation corps or climate conservation corps, I think it is. So, maybe one of the things we can do is to try to work through how we might create employment opportunities or work with volunteer groups or even this climate corps in the county to do some of the plantings. So, this is all like very, very preliminary. We don't have all the details worked out, but there might be something like this that we can do to address that specific issue that was raised. Jeff, you had your hand up, Jeff.
Yeah, I did, Bill. And I've not seen the memo from Soil and Water, so, but I will say that if you look closely, the bill does not require them to handle the reforestation. In fact, it's silent as to who would. It gives the county executive the power to identify and designate replacement lands. But it left open who would actually do the reforestation, precisely for the point that you mentioned, because by that point, there may be federal resources at play. It could be volunteers. It could be a Friends of the Park type group. These types of things lend themselves to sort of citizen action. So the Soil and Water Board is not charged with doing that. In fact, they're actually charged with very little. They're really sort of a preliminary sort of gatekeeper on this. They're charged with determining the value of the trees to be disturbed, but that's essentially doing math according to an established horticultural formula. So I recognize that, in terms of staff and human resources, we are presently challenged. So I tried to recognize that in not imposing sort of these, big new employee mandates without the money ready to do that. So
as what I promise to do is for Jeff, for Vicky, and anyone else who wants to be involved with this, I will forward to you the comments that I got both from council and from Susan, and then we can start to try to work through them. Okay. Matt, you had your hand up.
Well, no, I think sort of Jeff touched on it, and I'll defer to you, Bill, because I was a couple of things that they did mention to us in our meeting that I was going to get into, but I don't think now is necessarily the time. It sounds like you're going to address it with both Patrice and Jeff, some of the concerns they had, specifically, but I'll leave that to you.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
About their capabilities.
Chairman,
yeah, Patricia.
Chairman, I would be interested in seeing that, and I just want to say that I really support this whole concept that Jeff's putting forward. I think it's an important.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, Patricia, I will send you that information as well.
Thank you.
And okay, with that, then let's move on to item 4, authorizing the submission of a grant application to the Capital Region Partnership for Invasive Species Management regarding treatment to eradicate the invasive plant Lesser Celandine. How'd I do, Laura? At Henley Pond Nature and Historic Preserve. Laura.
Right, this is the second year of this grant. Last year, we received $4,800 to do an initial treatment on probably about a half an acre of Lesser Celandine, which is an invasive plant that grows close to wetlands usually, that had taken over a large area on the trail side towards the entrance of Henley Pond. After a second treatment this year, it should be under control to the point where if there are any reoccurrences, we can manage it by hand. So it basically is just a repeat of the project last year.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Laura? If none, is there a motion to approve? Matt,
I'll make a motion to approve.
is there a second?
I'll second. Vicky.
Was that Vicky? Vicky, I didn't see you raise your hand.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, passed unanimous. Item 5, authorizing an agreement with the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation and amending the 2021 Department of Economic Development, Conservation, and Planning budget. Laura, are you going to talk about this?
Sure, yep. This is approval of the annual snowmobile trails maintenance grant from Parks, Recs, and Historic Preservation in the amount of $12,756. It's a pass-through grant to 2 local snowmobile clubs to do trail maintenance.
All right, any questions? Is there a motion?
No questions. Make a motion.
Okay, is there a second? Patricia, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Was that, did I hear a second coming from Frank Camisso's phone?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, why don't, Patricia, how about we put Frank as the second? He had his hand up, I just didn't see it.
My hand wasn't up, but go ahead.
All right, I guess that's it for the agenda. Does anyone have anything else to say, or shall we adjourn for the evening?
Make a motion to adjourn.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay,